The morning started like any other in Seoul. Sung-ho sipped his coffee, watching the bustling city streets from his small apartment window. The early autumn wind carried a strange electrical charge that made the hair on his arms stand up. Something felt different. At the telecommunications center where he worked, the first signs of trouble began quietly. Most people wouldn't have noticed, just tiny glitches in the massive network of computers and communication systems. But Sung-ho noticed. His fingers danced across the keyboard, tracking an unusual pattern of electromagnetic interference that didn't match any known technological signature. "Hey, Ji-eun," he called to his colleague. "Come look at this." Ji-eun walked over, her engineering background matching Ho's analytical mind. The data streams flickered, almost imperceptibly, but something was definitely wrong. It was like watching a perfect machine slowly develop a hidden tremor. In the streets below, people continued their morning routines. Commuters packed into subway trains. Street vendors prepared their morning meals. Children rushed to school. Nobody knew that something extraordinary was about to change everything. The first real indication came at 10:43 a.m. Streetlights began to flicker. Mobile phones started to lose signal. The massive digital infrastructure that kept modern life running began to experience unexplained interruptions. At first, it seemed like a typical technical glitch, something that would be fixed in a few minutes, but it wasn't. Sung-ho realized they were experiencing something far more significant. The interference pattern suggested an external source, something deliberately targeting human communication networks. His military service training kicked in, and he began documenting everything meticulously. Ji-eun ran diagnostic after diagnostic. "This isn't a normal system failure," she muttered, her fingers flying across the keyboard. "This looks like something is actively trying to disconnect us." By noon, entire communication grids across the city had gone dark. Emergency services struggled to maintain contact. The initial calm began to transform into a nervous tension. People started asking questions. What was happening? Why weren't their phones working? Sung-ho knew they were witnessing something unprecedented. This wasn't just a technical problem. This was the beginning of something much larger. "We need to prepare," he told Ji-eun, his voice calm but determined. "Whatever is happening, it's not going to stop with Seoul." Little did they know this was just the first whisper of an invasion that would challenge everything humanity understood about survival, technology, and the true meaning of resilience. The day continued, each passing hour bringing more uncertainty. But in research centers, military installations, and small community groups across the city, something remarkable was beginning to happen. Humans were starting to adapt, and adaptation would become their greatest weapon. Notes for the narrative approach maintained a human-centric perspective, used simple, conversational language, created tension without graphic or violent content, focused on character perspective and emerging situation, kept technical descriptions accessible, avoided stereotypical alien invasion tropes, created a sense of mounting mystery and potential threat. The narrative sets up the invasion as a gradual, almost invisible process, emphasizing human observation and initial response. The tone suggests something significant is happening, but doesn't reveal all details immediately, creating narrative tension and reader engagement. The city fell into an uneasy silence. Communication networks remained down, and panic started to simmer beneath the surface. But not everyone was waiting to be rescued. In a small basement workshop beneath an old electronics store, a group of professionals began their quiet rebellion. Sung-ho had called together a network of contacts: engineers, former military personnel, computer experts, and university researchers. They weren't an official team. They were just people who refused to sit idle. Jae-wook, a retired military communications specialist, spread out a makeshift map on an old wooden table. His weathered hands traced potential communication routes. "We can't rely on standard infrastructure anymore," he explained, his voice gravelly from years of service. "We need to build our own network." Ji-eun was already dismantling old routers and communication devices. Each piece of equipment became a potential weapon against the unknown threat. Her fingers moved with precision, connecting circuits that weren't meant to work together. "Traditional systems are compromised," she muttered. "We need something completely different." Young Min, a university student studying quantum physics, brought something unexpected to the group. His research on electromagnetic interference provided crucial insights. "These disruptions aren't random," he explained, showing complex diagrams on a battery-powered tablet. "There's a pattern, almost like a language we don't understand yet." Outside, the city looked normal on the surface. But beneath that calm exterior, something was brewing. Small groups like this were forming all across Seoul, and probably across the world. People connecting, people fighting back. Sung-ho understood their greatest weapon wasn't technology. It was human creativity. They worked through the night. Old radio equipment mixed with cutting-edge quantum communication prototypes. Laptops powered by car batteries. Handmade signal boosters constructed from recycled electronics. Each person brought something unique. Min SEO, a former network security expert, developed a breakthrough. "We can create a mesh network," she explained. "Small independent communication points that can't be easily disrupted. If one point goes down, the others remain active." Their makeshift communication system wasn't perfect, but it was something. A tiny spark of resistance against an unknown threat. By morning, they had created a network that could communicate across parts of the city. Small, fragile, but alive. Jae-wook looked around the room. These weren't soldiers. They were teachers, engineers, students, regular people who refused to be silent. "We might not understand what's happening," he said, "but we're not going down without a fight." Sung-ho felt something building, not just in this room but across the city, across the country, across the world. Humans had always been adaptable, had always found ways to survive. Whatever was coming, they would be ready. The basement workshop became more than just a technical space. It became a symbol of human resilience, of hope. Outside, the first rays of sunlight began to break through the city's uncertain morning. Something was changing, and humanity was about to show its true strength. The city had transformed. What once seemed like a hopeless situation now buzzed with unexpected energy. Communities became living, breathing networks of survival and innovation. In a community center turned makeshift research hub, people from all walks of life gathered. A retired farmer worked alongside a teenage computer programmer. A high school science teacher collaborated with a local mechanic. Their differences didn't matter anymore. Survival had become the great equalizer. Sung-ho watched as young Min presented a breakthrough. "We've identified patterns in the communication disruptions," he explained, pointing to a wall covered in complex diagrams. Handwritten notes, printed, research and interconnected strings created a web of human understanding. Nearby, Ji-eun was demonstrating something remarkable. She had modified old radio equipment and quantum communication prototypes into a hybrid system that could potentially bypass the mysterious interference. "It's not about fighting technology," she explained to the group. "It's about understanding it and finding our own way." Local neighborhoods became survival zones of innovation. In apartment complexes, residents shared resources. One floor might have medical supplies, another communication equipment. Rooftop gardens sprouted where parking lots used to be. People, who had never spoken before, now worked together like a single organism. Jae-wook brought military precision to their efforts. "We need to think differently," he told the group. "Our strength isn't in matching their technology. Our strength is our ability to adapt." They discovered something fascinating. The disruption wasn't just targeting communication. It seemed to be studying human response. Every time they developed a new communication method, the interference would shift slightly. It was almost like an intelligent system trying to understand them. But humans were unpredictable. In a small workshop, Min Seo developed a breakthrough communication device. It looked like nothing more than a modified walkie-talkie, but it could transmit signals using multiple unexpected frequencies. "They won't be able to predict this," she said with a slight smile. Young university students became crucial resources. They understood technology differently. Where older generations saw limitations, they saw possibilities. Coding became a form of resistance. Each line of code was a small rebellion against the unknown threat. Local markets transformed. Instead of digital payments, people returned to bartering. Food, skills, and resources became the new currency. A baker might trade bread for communication equipment. A mechanic might repair a computer in exchange for medical supplies. Sung Ho realized they were witnessing something extraordinary. Humans weren't just surviving, they were evolving. The basement workshop had grown. What started as a small group now included people from across the city. Engineers, farmers, teachers, students, all working together. Their diversity became their greatest strength. "We're not just fighting," Jae-wook told the growing group. "We're reimagining how we exist." Outside, the city looked different. Makeshift communication towers appeared on rooftops. Community gardens filled empty lots. People moved with a new sense of purpose. The initial fear had transformed into determination. Sung Ho looked around the room. These weren't just people trying to survive, they were creating something new. A way of existing that was more connected, more collaborative than anything that had come before. The unknown threat had expected a simple invasion. Instead, they had awakened something profound. The invasion had become something more than a technological challenge. It was a battle of understanding, a war of perception that would be won not with weapons but with human complexity. In the Community Research Center, Ji-eun made a breakthrough that would change everything. She had been studying the patterns of interference and something remarkable emerged. The unknown threat wasn't just trying to disable human communication, it was trying to understand it. "They're analyzing us," she explained to Sung Ho, her fingers tracing complex interaction maps. "But they can't comprehend how we actually communicate." Humans, they discovered, were beautifully unpredictable. Where a computer system would follow strict logical patterns, people communicated through emotion, context, and subtle nuances that defied mathematical prediction. Young Min brought a fascinating perspective from his quantum physics research. "Our communication isn't linear," he explained. "We don't just exchange information, we share feelings, intentions, hidden meanings. It's like we're speaking a language that can't be fully decoded." The community began to experiment. They started sending deliberately confusing messages filled with poetry, with local slang, with inside jokes that made no sense to an outside observer. Each communication became a small act of psychological resistance. Jae-wook, drawing from his military intelligence background, understood this better than anyone. "They're trying to predict us," he told the group. "But humans are not predictable. We're chaos wrapped in skin." Local communities developed unique communication strategies. In one neighborhood, residents created a complex system of window signals, different colored curtains, subtle movements that carried entire conversations. In another, they used old-fashioned hand signals mixed with local dance movements. Each method was deliberately complex, deliberately human. Min Seo discovered something even more interesting. The interference seemed to become confused when humans communicated through multiple channels simultaneously. A conversation that happened through text, gesture, and implied meaning created a communication web that was impossible to fully decode. Schools became unexpected resistance centers. Teachers transformed learning into a form of psychological warfare. Children learned to communicate in ways that celebrated human creativity. They invented languages, created complex storytelling techniques, developed communication methods that celebrated human imagination. Sung Ho watched this transformation with a sense of wonder. What had started as a potential invasion was becoming a celebration of human potential. The unknown threat had made a critical mistake. They had assumed technology could overcome human spirit. Instead, they had awakened something profound: the incredible adaptability of human consciousness. Local communities shared stories. Each tale became a form of resistance. Stories of survival, of creativity, of unexpected human kindness. These narratives became more than just communication. They became weapons of psychological complexity. "We're not just resisting," Jae-wook told the growing group. "We're showing them what it means to be human." The city had transformed. What once seemed like a potential defeat now buzzed with an energy of collective determination. People who had never spoken before now worked together. Shared resources, created new ways of existing. Sung-ho realized they were witnessing something extraordinary. Humans weren't just surviving, they were evolving, transforming a potential invasion into an opportunity for connection. The unknown threat had expected a simple conquest. Instead, they had encountered the most complex system in the universe. The final confrontation wasn't what anyone expected. No massive battles, no dramatic explosions. Just a quiet, profound moment of human potential. Sung-ho stood in the makeshift research center, surrounded by the team that had become more than colleagues. They were family. Jiyeon's quantum communication prototype hummed softly, a device that represented months of collective effort and human creativity. "We're not just defending," Youngmin said quietly. "We're communicating in a way they've never seen before." The device was unlike anything previously conceived. It wasn't just a communication tool. It was a bridge between understanding, a way to transform the very concept of interaction. Days of preparation had led to this moment. Communities across Seoul, across the world, had been preparing, not with weapons, but with understanding, with creativity, with the unique human capacity to reimagine everything. Jiyeon's hands moved across the prototype. Complex quantum frequencies began to pulse, not as an attack, but as a form of communication so nuanced, so multi-layered, that it defied traditional understanding. "We're showing them our complexity," Jae-wook said, watching the device carefully. The interference that had plagued their systems began to change. Where once it had been an aggressive disruption, now it seemed confused, uncertain. The human communication method was something completely unexpected. In neighborhoods across the city, people watched. Communities that had come together, that had learned to survive, to adapt, to create. Children who had learned new ways of communicating. Elderly who shared wisdom. Professionals who had reimagined their skills. Sung-ho understood something profound in that moment. This wasn't just about stopping an invasion. This was about showing what humanity could be. The quantum communication device began to pulse with a rhythm that was almost musical, complex, unpredictable, filled with emotion, with intention, with layers of meaning that no simple computational system could fully decode. Youngmin explained it simply. "We're not speaking a language, we're sharing an experience." Slowly, the interference began to change, not disappear, not surrender, but transform. It was as if something was learning, understanding, recognizing that what it had considered a simple target was something far more complex. Jae-wook remembered his military training, but this wasn't a battle in any traditional sense. This was a conversation, a profound moment of potential connection. Hours passed. The device continued to pulse. Communities watched, waited, and then something unexpected happened. The interference didn't collapse. It didn't retreat. It began to resonate, to match, to attempt to understand. "We're not defeating them," Jiyeon whispered. "We're communicating with them." Sung-ho looked around the room. Engineers, scientists, former military personnel, students, people who had come together not out of fear, but out of hope, out of the fundamental human belief that understanding was possible. The device continued its complex communication, a bridge between the unknown and the familiar, between threat and understanding. Humanity had done something extraordinary. They hadn't conquered. They had transformed. As dawn broke over Seoul, something had changed. Not just in the city, not just on the planet, but in the fundamental understanding of what communication could be.